You are listening to the Small Town Big Talk Show, a weekly podcast for small town people with big ideas. I'm your host, Rebecca Undem, and each week we'll discuss a small town topic or idea to help you live big in your small town. I truly believe that small town living is amazing if we just choose to bloom where we're planted. Hey, Small Town Big Talk Show listeners. I'm Rebecca Undem, and I am my own guest today. I am coming at you with a solo cast today, honestly, partly for practical reasons. And secondly, I was sitting here thinking, what would I want to talk to my listeners about? There's so many topics, and I have these beautiful side conversations. Seriously, just about every single day, to where I would be like, people could totally benefit from this conversation. But what I decided to land on today is really some of the lessons that I am learning as I am trying to get my small town startup off the ground. So I'm going to share my vision of this business with you. And that actually is a free pass and an invitation to you, dear listener, to give me some feedback and, tell me what you think. Because when you hear these 5 specific lessons, if you will, you're going to hear that I am still in this is almost, I wouldn't call it pre-startup, but it almost is. I am still in the financing phase. I'm still in kind of the fundraising phase because this venture is part mission driven. And so it really is a pass and an invitation for you to share any resources or ideas that you might have with me. You're going to hear that that's one of the things I actually suggest. So bearing that in mind, here is what I'm working on in my small town. So there is this amazing large building in the middle of our main street, right across from our coffee shop in this little park. It's right in the heart of our small community on Main Street. And it's crazy. I have so much love in my heart for that building. My grandparents ran the Ben Franklin store from that building when I was a little girl. And in fact, in my book, I talk about that store. I talk about what it felt like. And it's really strange. Even now, decades later, I can walk into that building and there's a hint of the smell that building used to have. It's very, very strange. And when we moved back, my husband and I have been back in my hometown now 11 years. And it wasn't until I would say about a year ago that I really had the desire and the pull to do something in that building. A friend and I, 6 years ago, maybe had talked kind of briefly about an idea for it. And it just, the timing wasn't right. And I didn't feel 100% good about it. So it's crazy how really timing, I think ideas will come back to you. And now this one is back and it's firmly implanted in my heart. So essentially the mission of the venture is to grow both the people that live in a small town and the ideas that they have. I want to offer a space where we provide programming for both quality of life and business vitality. And the space itself will be renovated to include several things that I think just prove for a good incubation of both ideas and businesses. So in the space, there'll be coworking, which again, isn't something that is going to be super useful maybe right away in my small town. A lot of people don't even get what coworking is. And yet part of my goal from an economic development standpoint is to position our community as a community that's attractive to non-traditional employment. So if you're a freelancer or you work from home or you're a remote employee for a large employer, I just want to say, hey, we're a community that you can come and we get you. And I say these things sometimes any community can say it, but if you're not saying it, then nobody knows that's what you are. Well, that's what I want our community to be, because I think there's a future there that we can tap into. Clearly, co-working is all the rage on the coast. It always takes a little bit longer for those trends to land in the Midwest where we live. So co-working is a part of it. There'll be a dedicated art space. I've been talking a lot with our local arts, kind of our council or groups, a couple of people that consider themselves artists. And there would be space dedicated just for them to both create art and potentially host artists in residence, those kinds of programs. These groups are working so hard to make culture part of our quality of life, and yet they've never had a space for those things to actually live. And so that would be part of it. Then there'll be private offices and a couple of conference rooms that could be rented. We just don't have a lot of public spaces that were designed with that intent. Like, this is public, it's meant to be used for this. There's conference rooms that we can rent in our community, but they all exist inside of other businesses. So that would be something else. And then the last piece is a rotating storefront where people that have made something, like our local makers, could actually rent that space on a short-term basis, and then we would also help market them. Anybody that would use the space would benefit from us showcasing their work or highlighting what they have to offer. I get so jacked up when I think about it, when I talk about it. In the mornings, I often run by the building on Main Street, and then I run down the alley and I run by it, and it is almost like it is calling to me. So I want to share like where I'm at with it, so you can really hear that this isn't an easy thing. Like, this is a big thing that I'm trying to tackle. I'm going to tell you, like, the building speaks to me. It does not speak to my husband. In fact, I think if the building were talking to my husband, it would be saying something completely different. So as a wife, that's part of a team. I just want to share that this isn't an easy thing. And so where I'm at right now, like truly in the process, is that I'm still in the process of getting all the bids and the plans back and the estimates for what this renovation is going to cost. I anticipate it's going to be quite a large chunk of money. And currently, I'm also wrestling a little bit with how I'm going to structure this business. I originally thought this is straight up nonprofit, but there's a lot of challenges that come with running something like this purely as a nonprofit. And so I'm in just before I hit record to talk to you guys today, I just sent a note off to an attorney that was recommended to me to just ask the question, like, how do I make this thing work? Because ultimately, there's two things I know that I'm going to need to start the business. I'm going to need help from an impact investment standpoint from businesses that would have an interest in seeing this thing happen in our community to help with startup costs. I want to give people locally kind of that grassroots movement feel where they too could support it if they want to see it get off the ground. Because here's what I can tell you. As lofty and pie in the sky and head in the clouds, like I've heard all of these things, you guys, as this idea and this mission might be, I feel so strongly that growing our own and supporting the people that already live here will help create true evangelism for living in our community. And we won't have to think as much about how do we attract people back here, because it will literally create ambassadors for our community. I believe in people. I believe in the assets that are already here, and I want to do my part in nurturing them. And then big picture, we create some programs that get done here locally, and then we replicate them so other communities can benefit from what we've learned. That's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing. I'm in this place right now where I don't know from a business standpoint how to structure it and how to do it correctly. So I am seeking out those resources, trying to figure those things out. But even since February, when this idea first really took hold of my heart and I started chugging up the hill, pushing the giant boulder up that hill, there have been several things that I've learned. And I want to share these with you because if you were a person like me who's a big dreamer and you have ideas, whether they're even on this scale or not, like you don't have to be going after a building to have these kinds of feelings. You can legitimately have an idea of maybe for a committee you want to start or a project you want to see come to your community. And I just want to encourage you that my number 5 tip is really where the encouragement's going to come in. No matter what, I just want to share with you what I've learned, what has worked for me, and hopefully give you that boost that you need to just keep on trucking. So here's number 1. Share. It is incredible how many people you're going to need to tell the story and the vision and the excitement to. This is one thing if you're going to get honed at any part of this process, any skill that you're going to need as you're heading out to do this process, you have to be able to clearly articulate why you're doing it and what you're doing. And this is all like at this point, I don't have a website. I don't need a website. I can carry the torch of the message. But you can't tell like one person and expect that to be enough, especially if you're like me and you're going to need some startup funding support. You need to talk about it until you're sick of talking about it. And one of the ways to do this I have found to be just not only effective, but beautifully surprising is taking somebody new to coffee in your community. Now, a couple of years ago, when I started working with my speaking coach, she talked to me about the danger of driving to Fargo. So I live 110 miles from the largest city in North Dakota, and I would constantly get in my car and drive to Fargo just to have coffee with someone because I was just like dying for the connection with people. And I made a choice that I need to be a good steward of my time first and foremost. And so I stopped doing that. But this is different. This feels different too, because what I'm finding is that I'm going to coffee with people that I've known in one way, shape, or form, like some sort of circle or some sort of way. And I'm finding out completely unknown things about them. There are two distinct people that come to mind when I wrote this one down that I learned about their formal education and what they had done prior to moving here. I had no idea. And you know what I have now? Two champions for what I'm trying to do. And seriously, two people that I want to do whatever I can to support. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't included them in part of this vision sharing, message carrying process that I've been doing. Take someone new to coffee. You'll be amazed at what you might learn about them. The second thing is to remember that not everyone is going to get it and not everyone's going to support it. And that can be a really challenging thing you'll wrestle with that. If you're anything like me, I'm still by nature a people pleaser. I want everybody to like me, and I feel really bad about myself when not everybody does. And that can be really hard. It really can be hard to wrestle with knowing that there are people that are actually standing in opposition of what you're trying to do. And yet, I actually am going to read you this little quote that I found because I just thought it was so beautiful, and it's definitely appropriate for what we're talking about right now because it's very, very hard. And I talk about this in my keynote message. I talk about being bold and how, other people aren't going to get your choices all the time. And that doesn't mean that there's not value in what you're pursuing. But I found this little quote that says, so the bad news is that you cannot make people like, love, understand, validate, accept, or be nice to you. You can't control them either. The good news is it doesn't matter. And I was just like, oh, I love that. And yeah, of course that's true. But when you get into something of this size and scope, and if you too, like me, are going to need some business support or you need people to get behind you, as you collect those no's or those just, I don't get it, or those just, how is that going to help anybody? People that just don't catch the vision, it can be very discouraging. But you have to remember that you're the torchbearer. You're the one carrying it forward. And nobody actually has the ability to completely extinguish your torch. You're the one that has to carry the message forward. So in what appears to be complete opposite idea, number 3 is to ask for help and let people tell you what they think. You aren't going to be able to do anything substantive alone. You're going to need people to get involved. And so really number 3 is ask for help. Number 4 is really ask for feedback. And this can be a difficult thing to balance because as soon as you open yourself up to feedback, you also open yourself up to the negative people that maybe aren't going to get it, right? That can be tricky. It can be hard to hold both of those things at one time. But when we ask for feedback, we literally can get the input of the people that may eventually be end users of the space or the idea or the project. And in fact, go to those people. If you know who they are, go to them and ask them, what would you do differently? What would you include that I'm not seeing? And let them help shape the end product or the end result. These conversations have been so enriching, and some of the coolest things that I've written down have not been my idea. They still support the vision, they support the mission. And that's the thing. If somebody gives you some feedback that doesn't, you don't have to take it. You can still say thank you. The curiosity that we need to wear when we're taking on something like this is really what I'm suggesting here, is just be open, be curious, ask good questions. And if you don't like what they have to say, just say thank you, be polite, and leave it. You don't have to incorporate every idea that you hear. And number 5 is seriously just to keep going. Every single day, take one tiny step forward. It is the tiny steps, the little by little, the little things become a lot. Big results happen from a succession of tiny little steps and tiny little moves forward. So every day, if you do something to move your project or your initiative or your business forward, seriously, that's part of it. It's just like I said, pushing a boulder. That's what it feels like. Because ultimately, I think, where I'm at, there have been, you guys, I've lost so much sleep over this. Like I lay in bed at night and then I think to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I pursuing this? Like I have 3 little kids, my husband farms, I speak for a living, and I have enough going on. Like I don't need this business, but it isn't letting go. I truly think where I'm at right now is I don't ever advocate saying this, like if I don't do it, who will? But this is something that I desperately want to see this happen in my community. And I definitely I could sit back and say, well, it's a pretty great thing. And it'd be so great if somebody did that. Or I can just keep forging ahead because I want it for myself. This is something I'm sitting and I'm recording this episode in my home office. I have honestly a lovely little home office and I'm so grateful for it. But I get cagey in here and I want to be inspired by the space around me. And so these are the things that I'm hoping this business will deliver back to me. And because I see it because I know, and I've done the legwork and I've had the conversations, I know what can work and I know what is possible. And so that doesn't necessarily feel like a mantle of responsibility per se, but it feels like a torch that I still want to carry forward. And I'm going to carry this torch forward until we figure out how to make this thing happen. So with that, I'm going to end this episode just telling you that trying to take on things like this, of this nature in a small town, none of it is easy. And yet, friend, it is so worthwhile. And I am just cheering you on. I am in your corner from my little corner of the world. And I'm here for you and I'm cheering for you. So if you have any thoughts on this for me, any feedback for who I should speak with or resources that I should check into, by all means, friend, let me know. And of course, if you are working on something that you want to run by me, I would love to hear about it. And of course, as always, let us know what you thought of today's episode. And if there are people that we should interview or have as a guest on the talk show, please be sure to let us know. We're all about highlighting the best of what's to love about small towns. Okay? Keep on living big in your small town, friend. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us this week on the Small Town Big Talk Show. If you liked what you heard, we invite you to go to our website, smalltownbigtalk.com, and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You really want to go all out? Hop on over to iTunes and give us a rating. And be sure to share the podcast with all your other small town friends, because it's true. The size of your life is not determined by your zip code.